Okay, serious question. Are you doing refactoring while you develop? Because if you've got legacy code or technical debt, then getting good at refactoring can make a significant difference and help you get out of that situation. Refactoring is also an essential part of test-driven development, and you won't get good at TDD without also getting some refactoring skills. And it is a skill. You get better at it with training and practice. In this guided learning hour, you and your team can learn more about this important topic and get some practice in. If you haven't done this before, go check out my video, Guided Learning Hour How To. And if you just want to prepare this learning hour, check the links in the show notes. So, gather your team, pause the video. Let's start. This is a guided learning hour, and that means this training is designed to be done together with the other people in your development team. You'll learn software development skills and get experience with new tools and techniques. These are skills that your team should be able to take advantage of in your daily work straight afterwards. And you'll get much better results if you all take part in these sessions and support one another. And I can pretty much guarantee it will be more fun than doing it by yourself. Hello everyone, I'm Emily Bache from Saman Technical Coaching. Today's session is about refactoring. We're going to be using this shared whiteboard that everyone should have access to. What refactorings do you already know about? I expect you've used some. Can you remember what they're called? I'd like you just to spend a few moments now, each just writing down notes describing the names of refactorings that you already know. Okay, so I wonder what you've come up with. And I'm almost sure that you know some refactorings already, even if you couldn't think of their names at this point. And one that you've almost certainly used is rename. And that's something that I think all software developers have found useful, that you've got a method or a function or a class and you want to rename it throughout your project. And you can do that with a simple search and replace. But if you do it with a refactoring tool, it will know about the structure of your code and hopefully it will do that better. We're going to see a demo of that later, but let's talk a little bit first about refactoring as a thing. Now, Martin Fowler is the authority on refactoring. He wrote the book like 20 years ago, and he's been maintaining this website with all the information from the book and the second edition of the book, which is more recent. And it's really worth having a look through. I do recommend you get the book. It's a large part of it is a huge catalogue of refactorings. So actually the part that you need to read is only a bit at the front, explaining about what refactoring is. So it looks quite thick, but you really don't need to read a lot of it to get a great deal of value from it. So the website is also very useful and shows some of the refactorings, or all of the refactorings kind of briefly described that are in the book. So what is refactoring? Martin Fowler gives a couple of definitions, and this is the first one, the thing refactoring, the noun. So a refactoring is a change made to the internal structure of software to make it easier to understand and cheaper to modify without changing the observable behavior. And there's a couple of things about this definition I just want to highlight a little bit. So the motivation for doing refactoring is to make your code easier to understand and cheaper to modify. The reasons you want to do this are economic. This is about good engineering. This is about saving yourself time and effort in the long term. This is not some kind of moral crusade that I'm a better programmer than you because I do refactoring. No, this is practical. This is what we need to do a good job. So I do encourage you to learn to do refactoring well because you'll write better code. So I mentioned this catalogue that's in the book and on the website, and this is just a few of the things that he's got there. And for example, the rename refactoring is listed twice, basically. He's got rename variable, rename field. So, and if you look in the book, he's actually got detailed mechanics of how to do those refactorings safely. The thing is, these days we have tools. We don't need actually all the small steps and mechanics that are in the book. They were needed when it first came out, but these days we have tools. And one of the things about the tools, though, is that the names of them are not always the same as the ones in the book. So, for example, rename is just rename in ReSharper, and probably whichever refactoring tool you've got, it's similar. I also wanted to highlight one that really annoys me. It's called extract variable in Martin Fowler's book, and it's called introduce variable in ReSharper, and it's exactly the same thing. And anyway, so the names are a little bit different, and names are important because they give us a way to discuss things. So when you're talking to other developers about coding, you can say, oh, I think you need to do a introduce variable there, and you'd like them to know what you mean. So I think it's quite good if you and your team have a vocabulary that is shared and you can talk about these things. At the start of this session, I got you to do a little activity where you all wrote down the names of refactorings that you know. I'd like to just get you to come back to that now. So you should have a frame on your board that looks a bit like this, except with more notes on. And what I'd like you to do is go through each note and look at it and say, well, is that the same as the name our tool uses? And you could look up the names that your tool uses. I'm sure it's got some documentation. And if you've got it the same as the tool, then you could color it green. And if not, you could add another little note that says the name your tool uses and put it next to that note so that you can remind yourselves what the actual names are that you should use when you're talking to one another. So just spend a few minutes just going through those notes and seeing if you can agree on the language you could use in your team. And that leads us into the other definition of refactoring that Martin Fowler has. He says refactoring, the doing, the verb of refactoring is when you're restructuring software design by applying a series of refactorings, the noun, without changing the observable behavior. So this is all about how you refactor. And I think rather than me trying to explain this anymore, I'm going to go to the demo and show you. Okay, so let's do some refactoring then. In this demo, I'm going to be using C# and ReSharper in the Rider IDE. You may not have those tools, but I think that should be fine. The exercise source code is available in many different programming languages, and to an extent, you should just learn to use the tools you actually have. While you're watching me refactor, try not to get hung up on all those kinds of details. Try to focus on how I'm refactoring, because I want to show you what it looks like when you're taking small steps, using tools, and getting frequent feedback. This is a little exercise that I put together, which is doing scoring for a game of tennis. And this is the third version of the exercise, which is why this is called TennisGame3. But I just wanted to show you this one because it gives a lot of scope for using the rename refactoring. And let me show you. So here we've got good automated tests. So you've got that source of feedback. It's very fast to run. And we've got this method getScore, which is quite short, but it's got quite a lot of mysterious names in it, things that it's not really obvious what they are. So I think I could improve that. And then this 1 point method there. So I'm going to start by looking at these fields. Now, so this field here is called P1N, and it's being assigned in the constructor, and it's being assigned to a player name. So I think it should be called player1 name. That would be a better way to call this. And then similarly, player2 name. So that already makes those fields a little bit easier to understand what they are. But then I've got these other fields, P1 and P2. I don't know what they're about. Let's have a look in the code. So it's being used all over the place. But this last one here, when it's used in 1 point, there it starts to make sense. We are saying which player, the argument to the method is the player name, which player has won the point. And then we're incrementing it. So clearly this is some kind of count of how many points that player has got. So I'm going to rename that to player1 points and player2 points. And that already seems to make it a little bit clearer what's going on here. But it's had the disadvantage of making some of the lines of code here rather long. And there's one that's gone off the screen, and I don't like that. So I'm just going to convert that ternary operator there to an ordinary if statement. My tool will do that for me. So I've been doing lots of small changes here. What is S? That's another bad name here. It's being used in several places. See if I can work out a better name for that. Maybe it'd be easier if I knew what P was. Now, P appears to be the names, it's an array of the names of the different scores you can get in tennis. Tennis has very strange scoring. So if you've got no points, it's love. So anyway, we just could rename this variable then and call that instead points names. That seems better. And now S is being assigned here to a points name. So perhaps S is a score. So that looks a little better. And now this line is too long. So let's convert that to an if statement as well using the tool. And okay, so what's next? Points names. Now we've just named that and it's never being updated. I think we should have a field for that. I'm going to use the introduce field refactoring. And this field could perhaps be initialized in a field initializer. It could be static and read only. We're never writing to it. So yeah, that makes sense. And then it's carefully put the definition up there for me. So that's nice. Okay, what else do we want to do here? Okay, so the score down here. Oh, so that's a surprise. Here the score is being assigned to a player name. So that's it. When now we've delved a bit deeper and renamed this thing, this string is being used in two different places for two different things. And that seems like a bit of a problem. So why don't we do split variable on this? So this is one of those refactorings I'm doing entirely manually. So I just took the definition of this score variable and copied it into both halves of this if statement. And then I ran the tests just to check that that wasn't a mistake, because I'm always a little bit more nervous when I'm refactoring by hand instead of using the tools. But I seem to have succeeded with that one. So now that gives me the opportunity to rename this variable and not the other one. So I'm going to call this one leader because we're assigning it to the player who has the most points. So that seems to me like the leader in your tennis game. And now, of course, I can see that it's prompting me with this little wiggly underline and this little light bulb that I could join the declaration and assignment of these variables, and that might make the code a bit clearer. Great, so this is looking quite good now. In this channel, you can find content for technical coaches and lead developers. If you enjoy what you see here, please hit subscribe and like. You can also get additional materials and exclusive subscriber content via my Patreon. What else do I want to do here? Oh, yes, so this thing. Now, what is this doing? This is some kind of very strange looking piece of logic that's going to work out what part of the game we're in. So the game of tennis kind of has two parts. There's the first part where you're scoring love and 15 and stuff, and then there's the end game when you're getting advantage or maybe somebody will win. And this bit of logic here is basically trying to work out, are we in the end game yet? So I'm going to just pull out a variable. So I'm using that introduce variable. Actually, it said there in the little prompt, extract/introduce. So it's realized that it didn't get Martin Fowler's names on that one. So this is extract variable, introduce variable, depending on what your tool calls it. And I'm going to give a name to this bunch of logic here. So I'm going to call it is not yet end game. And that immediately makes it a bit easier to understand what this code is doing. There's a similar horrible looking Boolean expression here. I shall do the same here and name this one. This one is actually working out whether we're in a situation where it's advantage or whether somebody's won. So I'll call that one is advantage. So just introducing more names in this code is hopefully making it a bit easier to understand. Okay, so now I'm going to just look over this. Is there anything else? Well, my tests are still passing. That's a great sign. And, oh, yes, maybe I should invert this if statement. Is not yet in endgame is a bit of a funny name. So if I kind of invert this and rename it to is endgame, I think that would be better. Yeah, so I like to have positive things in my if statements. Right, so you've just seen me refactor this code. Now it's your turn. And I'd like you to have a go at what I did, try and improve the names in this Tennis 3 implementation. And I'd like you to basically do what I did, with your own twist, of course. But try and remember the things that I said were important. Take small steps, use your tools, run your tests to get feedback. And just see how far you get. You've got probably, 20, 30 minutes to work on this. Your facilitator will be able to tell you how much time is left. And if you get through it all in that time, you could stash your code and do it over and practice just being more fluent with your tools, remembering what the shortcuts are and what the refactorings are called. I'd like you just to spend a couple of minutes now writing a note to your future self. How would you describe refactoring? Writing this down will help you to remember it. So do spend a couple of minutes, each person individually, writing their own note. How would you describe refactoring? So I hope your fingers are buzzing to continue using those refactorings in your production code today. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to tell all your colleagues about it and your manager. Until next time, happy coding! This part of the video is not designed to be done with the whole team. This part is for the facilitator or the technical change leader or the person who's going to be guiding their team through this session. So I just wanted to go through a few bits of preparation and advice that should make it run more smoothly. But before I do that, I would like you to have a think. You've just watched the video that you're going to show to your team. Try and write down now, what are the things that you need to prepare before that can happen? Your list is always going to be better than anything I come up with. So make your list first, and then I'll see if I can remind you if there's anything you've forgotten. Great, so I hope you've had a think about this, and I just wanted to highlight 3 things that you should definitely prepare before the session. Firstly, the coding exercise. We're working on the tennis refactoring kata, which is on my GitHub, and you'll need to choose which programming language to do it in. In the repo, there's a folder for lots of different languages, so pick the one you want to work in with your team and open that folder in your IDE or your refactoring tool. Then you should make sure that you can build the project and run all the tests. All the tests should pass. And you should need to find the TennisGame3, which is the one we work on in the session. Now, it's great if you've got all that set up on your computer. You also need to give some thought for how your team member's going to do this. Can you make it really easy for them? Can you, in some way, copy the project you've just made in your IDE to some shared folder where they can all just grab it so that they don't have to go to GitHub and find the right folder and stuff? You've only got an hour. The exercise is a small part of that, and the more setup you can have done in advance, the less chance there is that developers waste time in the session getting it set up. So that's one thing to do. The other thing is, you may have noticed there is a section where you're going to be asked to look up the names that your refactoring tool uses to describe refactorings. So it might be a good idea to get hold of the documentation for your tool, and there should be some online documentation. Perhaps you want to take a look through it yourself so you're familiar with the kinds of names that are in there, and be prepared to share the link to it in the session. And then perhaps the most important thing, of course, is you need to book the session into your team calendar and make sure everyone knows when it is and what they're expected to prepare and what's going to happen roughly. Cool. So I hope you've now got a list of what to do before the session. I'm going to go through a few things now about what's going to happen during the session that you're going to need to help me out with. So this is an overall picture of the 4 places when I'm going to need your help. And there's a little piece for you to do in each of the 4 C activities for this session. And that's a reference to Training from the Back of the Room by Sharon Bowman, which might be a book you want to get, actually. I do recommend it. So the overall timings for each of these pieces is there. So most of them it's actually quite short, just a few minutes where you are needing to pause the video and take your team through an activity. So now I'm going to go through each of those 4 things in more detail with a little bit more advice. The connect. So this is right at the start of the session when the point is to set the scene and get people talking and connect to the topic. So here you're asking people to give you names of refactorings that they already know. There are no wrong answers. Write down whatever they say on notes. And when you've got 3, 4, 5 notes, that's enough. You can stop at that point. If the names just keep coming, you can say, whoa, that's great, but we'll do more of that in the rest of the session. This is supposed to be just quite a quick thing at the start. Then we're going to come back to this a bit later in the session. I'm going to go through what refactoring is and what it means to have a name for a refactoring. And then you need to come back to the notes that you wrote on the initial frame. And I've put some notes up here that might be similar to what your team comes up with. I don't know what your team's going to come up with. That's going to become clear in the session. But imagine that this is what they came up with. You have an opportunity now to practice this part. So what you're going to need to do is work out if any of these names are the same name that your tool has. And if they are, you colour them green. So rename variable, that's probably one of the names in your refactoring tool, maybe. So go through this now for yourself. Pause the video and see which ones of these would you colour green and which one of these would you add a little note to saying, actually, it should be called this. Great, so I hope you've had a go at that yourself, and perhaps what you've come up with looks a bit like this. Some of them are correct, extract method. Some of them are nearly correct, pull up method, push down method. And some of them, like break dependencies, that's a bit vague. That's not really the name of a particular refactoring. So now you've practiced on this, hopefully you're in a good state to be able to do this with whatever your team comes up with in the session. Okay, so the next part you're going to be facilitating is the coding exercise. And you'll have already done some preparation here so that people have got the code and they can run the tests already. So there are a few things that could happen here. You need to organise yourselves into pairs to work on this. And you also need to work out how much time you have and set a timer, because that's the first thing that might happen here. There is a danger that you will run out of time and skip the conclusions. And that's not a good outcome. It's almost always better to save 5 minutes at the end for a conclusions activity than it is to have 5 minutes more working on the exercise. So do set a timer. Another thing that might happen is that 1 or 2 people are actually really good at this already and finish the exercise really quickly. So it's good to have a plan for what to do about that. What I usually do when this happens is say, oh, that's great. I'm so pleased that you know how to do this. Could you, stash your code, reset to the starting position and do it again faster with more shortcuts? Because that's a way to increase people's fluency with refactoring, and that's really valuable. So make sure that both people in the pair also have had a chance to try out the keyboard shortcuts. Another thing that might happen is that actually nobody gets on very well with the exercise, and everyone's really struggling because they haven't done much refactoring before. At that point, you might not want to split into pairs. If everyone's going to be struggling in small groups, it might be better to all struggle together where you can get more support from one another. And at that point, perhaps you offer to be the typist. And then the trick is to not make it another demo. It shouldn't be you just kind of showing the refactorings again. I already did that. What you need to do there is to only do things if somebody else in your team has asked you to. So don't just do rename. Wait, just say, what should I do now? And wait for someone to suggest, oh, I think you should do rename. And then you can say, do you know what the shortcut is? Can you tell me? Can you help me? And then hopefully everyone will contribute to solving the problem together, and it will be a much more positive experience than everyone struggling in their own little pairs. Anyway, setting the timer is probably the most important thing to do here. So when the time is up for this, then it's time for the conclusions. In this part, I've asked everyone individually to write their own definition of refactoring. And so just try and prompt people to do that. If they're not writing anything, say, well, what would you say if a colleague asked you what refactoring is? Or what surprised you about refactoring today? You could write that. Now, writing these things is for the benefit of the people writing them. It's so that they remember it better because it's in their own words. It's not actually for your benefit. So if no one writes anything, well, okay, maybe next time they'll feel more confident. At least encourage them to write it down for themselves, even if it's not on the shared whiteboard. And when the time is up, you can resume the video, and that's pretty much the end. Thank everyone for coming, and I hope it will have been a positive enough experience that you'll want to do it again. So hopefully that's the facilitator's briefing. That's what you need to know before you lead this session. Thanks. Good luck.